All right, welcome to another episode of Comic Book Squares. Today we're going to be talking about You Are Obsolete. My name's Shane.
I'm Paul.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Mike. Let's get this show started.
All right. Well, this one's an interesting one. I read issue one. I know a few of the other squares have went on and read a little bit more, but it's interesting. I know that I could see Ben shifting around in his seat. He's excited for this.
I'm not squirming because it's
spoiler
bad
alert.
This time,
You may need to start.
No. That's right. He's squirreling because it's good.
Good squirm.
Spoiler alert. He's the one who jumped ahead and read the whole thing. So have at it, Ben.
Since we're focusing on issue one, I'm just going to give a little bit of the breakdown. So, we're following this reporter who has kind of been blackballed in the media, and she gets this weird message, basically somebody hiring her to tell their story. And when she gets to this out in the middle of nowhere island, things start to get creepy, and there's a lot of talk of things being ran by the children. And I'll leave it at that because I want people to go and read it. But it is creep-tastic. It reminds me of some of the best Stephen King stuff out there. I was just real quick. It reminded me. Okay, so we were talking earlier before we started recording about the parallels to Children of the Corn with these kids, the children, and all that. But actually, when I was thinking about it a little more, there's two Stephen King books at play here. I feel you have Children of the Corn and Cell. Now, Cell wasn't one of his most well-received books, as far as I know, but it was all right. But it was like about the cell phones, and then like a signal goes out and drives people insane, and everything goes nuts from there. So I mean, obviously, it's not exact parallel, but it did kind of have. Whereas Children of the Corn was more focused on like these kids and religion, and kind of I think it's Stephen King's opinion on religion as as a whole.
Oh yeah.
But instead, it's technology. So I think that's a kind of a cool new take on this. I don't want to give anything away as the story progresses, but it's super creepy and interesting.
Hey, Paul, who were the artists and writers involved in this? Did you get a chance to look them up?
I did a little bit. So, AfterShock Comics is, one of the newer independent companies that's out there. And so, Mathew Klickstein, the writer and creator, and I say it, Evgeniy Bornyakov is the artist. I'm not familiar with their work. They're more indie, and we haven't had a chance to get into some of their other works. But when I read the book and looked at the art, I felt like they're obviously familiar with the genre, right? They really, I can tell that they were influenced by some existing kind of works that are out there. One thing that I liked, and this was really the artist, just the weird smile on some of the people's faces throughout the book. You could tell it just, when they were talking about what goes on in the town, and they were talking about the children, and they just had like almost that Joker-esque smile plastered on their face. I was like, this is creepy enough to make me want to keep reading. So it's really kind of, it's really one of those books you're like, it kind of came out of nowhere. I picked it up on a whim. Obviously we're looking for independent stuff, and Aftershock being, with some of the other companies being those that really aren't afraid to put something out like this. And I don't think I haven't read anything else or seen the artist's art before this, but I thought it was really, really well drawn. I mean, you could tell the difference between the characters. It was real distinct. You could almost feel the tension on people's faces, which I think is tough to do. The extreme emotions are easy to do. You're either, or you're like, but if it's like, if they're just looking ahead, like something weird is about to happen. It's like, if they don't say that, you don't know that, but there are some panels in there that are wordless, and you're like, something's about to go down, like when that lady freaks out in the bar, when she like breaks her violin or cello or whatever it is, and you're just like, oh man, she's about to snap. And it was like, and then they're like, how do we get you out of here before things get worse? And it was like,
Right.
so really, like I said, I picked this up on a whim, but I was real pleased with the way the first issue turned out. Not being super familiar with the creators at all.
Yeah.
Now, what'd you think, Ben?
Oh,
I'm sorry, Mike.
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 Ben has no
Mike.
opinion
Sorry
on
about
this,
that.
on this
you're
series
right.
whatsoever.
Sorry, man.
Mike, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, Paul, he's been stating a lot of things that I thought about as well. The artwork, extremely great artwork, and just again, not to just totally echo everything that Paul just said, but there were times where, as the one of the main characters so far that we know of in issue one is trying to figure things out, and then, because that person's trying to figure things out, and the same thing that I'm trying to figure out based upon, again, how it's been illustrated and how it's been written so far. So it's very quick to I think interest the reader to a point where you're like, okay, so that's kind of creepy and that doesn't seem right, and you start almost putting your detective hat on right away because you're like, okay, even though the main character is trying to do the same thing I'm doing, like I want to get there before the main character gets there. And it's just
Yeah.
the style, the viewpoints, the artwork, the writing, everything has been really fantastic in issue one. And there's definitely some little not necessarily Easter eggs, but little tidbits of information that's kind of trickled out to you, talking about
Yep.
based upon age and these children and these interesting panels. So it's really, to Paul's point, came out of nowhere. They may not be these well-known, super well-known names that we've heard, but man, they have already put together in my opinion, a fantastic issue one. To Ben's point, it's like, holy cow, how do I, I'm gonna read on and I want to see what the heck's going on. So yeah, very well put together.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and killing off all adults by their 40th birthday is a little unnerving for those of us that have gone past our 40th birthday. I'm like, are they going to come looking for me next? Get off my phone, close the computer. No technology, no technology.
Well,
You're not getting me, interwebs.
Well, I think Paul, didn't they use the word vanquished, I thought, or something like that? I don't know. They used a
Yes.
term where even that, Paul, I was like, okay, so does that, where, once again, does that mean that they are, taken out of the picture completely,
Yeah.
or,
Yeah,
right? So there's still even some question with that because it's how you interpret that, I guess.
Sure.
But yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's ambiguous. Yet no one in the town is over 40 years old. So I'm thinking,
like Logan's Run.
That's really that's really interesting, Mike, that you brought up that point about the words,
Right.
because as an artist, both on the drawing side and on the writing side, you can put in these things that are subtle that help drive the story, but are you might not know about the full understanding until later on in the series. And I just come back to the artwork side and those weird grins on everybody's faces. I mean, it's genuinely unsettling. I mean, there some of the strangeness of the looks that the artist was able to pull off is really cool stuff. And like, I don't think I'm giving anything away, but I'll just say in general, there's a vehicle that drives around in the town.
Yeah.
There's some stuff going on with that's
Yes.
weird and unsettling as well. Like, I don't know what the heck that is, but just like with that word vanquish, like I'm looking at that car thinking, okay, what the heck is going on inside that vehicle and what is causing that? And I mean, I'll echo what everybody else is saying, that just a great way to start off the series, introduce this. I love how they focused on just the one character initially,
Lila,
to get us kind of hooked into the story and tell the story through her eyes, which is what I'm assuming is going to happen. I will say that for me, and the entire episode essentially is building to the setup, and then there's that cliffhanger ending. I kind of wish that would have been sped up a little bit. Like I kind of got what was going on by the middle of the book, and I could have got to that cliffhanger probably 10 pages earlier. But as it sits with me since I've read it, maybe I do appreciate the pacing, but I don't know. That's what I love about these review shows is us getting a chance to, and hear what everybody else thought. And if I'm, because I can definitely come at things and be off base completely, and I need to hear some voices of reason to bring me back down and say, no, the pacing was perfect, Shane. You're crazy.
Well, it's funny you use the word episode.
Glad we could help.
Because it's funny you use the word episode because so to your point about the pacing, I saw it as like an episode 1 of some like limited Netflix series or something like that, right? Where they are going to go and kind of world build a bit and do this backstory, and then at the end you're like, oh shit, and then you're like, okay, now I gotta watch the next episode. It's like the binge worthy kind of stuff, right? Where they and I noticed that with a lot of their shows. I watched all like the Marvel, the Marvel shows that were on Netflix, and the first like but those unfortunately sometimes first 1 or 2 episodes were like a lot of exposition and backstory and all that, and then the action. But that's how I kind of took this, was like a little bit of world building, getting you into the main character's head, kind of setting the scene on the island, and then going boom. Now read issue 2, and I'm like, okay, I have to. So I think that's why it hooked me, was because and everybody here has already pointed out like the creepiness factor, and turning every well, I was reading it on Comixology, so like there were times I was zooming in on like the car, for example, because I was like, how did you capture like this creeptastic look on people's faces? It's really good because there's a million ways to mess that up, but the artist nailed it. Well, we've already mentioned the children. The children in issue 1, when you just see their faces and they're creepy without like any like, they don't have fangs or like nasty looks. They're just dead in the face almost. I don't know if that's the right way to put it.
No, I 100% agree. I to echo, even what Paul was saying before about this, the artist needs some real praise here as far as being able to, just like you said, they're normal humans. It's not like, it's easier to do with like a superhero thing where you can, make it exaggerated and crazy and emphasize it with a costume as well. But when it's just a regular human, and to get that across through just the visuals, a lot of praise to that artist for making it, just like I said, creepy. It's cool stuff.
And as far as the pacing,
So
I'm sorry, I'll cut you off, Paul.
no, go ahead.
I just want to touch on the pacing. I think this is not this isn't some of the other social media platforms where we all have to agree, Shane. So I know you said, or we might convince you otherwise. To me, I'm like, no, you're entitled to. Again, that's the beauty of why we're doing what we're doing, because indie world is freedom, right, to express yourself and to have those opinions. So I hope we don't convince you to change your mind on that. But it's funny that Ben said that, because Ben, I was thinking the exact same thing when Shane was talking about that. I immediately went to Disney Plus and some of the more recent things, whether it's Moon Knight or Loki or all these different stories, and I think even again, people with that massive amount of talent, where you have just amazing teams of people, and sometimes their pacing is a little different than what we might like or the way that we might interpret that. And so I think that's absolutely 1,000% normal for everybody to be a little bit different with their pacing. So yeah, I think you're spot on, Shane, for you, and that's fine. And for us, if we have a difference of opinion, that's okay. It's all right.
Yeah. I will tell you guys in terms, in terms of the artist, I will tell you guys, I haven't found that he had a Twitter. He was a little harder to find, but there's a website called ArtStation, and if you search his name, he's got some beautiful works of art on there. He's from Russia, actually, so I imagine it was probably harder for him probably to get into the industry. But he does have have a range of things on there where he's done some really great work. His work reminds me of some other artists, so to me it was familiar too. But again, in terms of the pacing and the art style, when I looked at it, I thought like you did, Shane. I would think, okay, it seems to be getting a little it seemed like it was okay. We were there. Okay, I get it. But then all of a sudden something would happen, and I was okay with that. You know what I mean? It was like the pacing was for me was just right. But I get it, and that's a personal preference. And for sure, you're right. So some of the reviews we've done, it seemed like they just took forever to get somewhere. And that's where the writer probably had something different in mind. We might have an expectation, but I think with the good art is what kept me hooked in. I think if had it been maybe a lesser artist, it might have been a different story for us. And this was, to me, the perfect art for this type of story, and the color palette and things like that. It was bright where it needed to be, and then not where it needed to be.
Great point.
Props to those guys for that.
Good point on the art, like helping drive that. You're right, Paul. I'll definitely give you that on the pacing because things were so creepy and little things were like there was just so much there was little things to look at because of the creep factor. I was like, now I'm into the mystery, right? So I'm digging into the panels more. I think that helped me with the pacing. So I'll give you that. Yeah, I agree. Because seeing that car drive by every once in a while, I was like, oh,
right?
Right?
Yeah, I 100% agree with what you just said, Paul. That is a fantastic point too. In that, and in the book, there might not be a lot going on with dialogue or even internal monologue on the screen text wise, and it's just some imagery. And so, in my mind, I'm just thinking that pacing wise, that could have been sped up, but you're right. They fill that in with artwork that, like with the car in particular, or even like when she comes down into the hotel, like just the interaction she has with that lady, and her weird look on her face. Though the artwork definitely helped keep the story moving by itself. It was doing a lot of lifting. And that's maybe that was an artistic choice. Maybe the writer was hoping for that and had to find the right artist.
Sure.
I think that's what makes comic books in general such an interesting art form in how those things have to play together perfectly to get to a final vision. I 100% agree with what you're saying.
Yeah, based on some of these interviews that we've done and stuff, I wonder, because now we're hearing more about the collaborative process and everything from some of these creators, I wonder what might have changed or come about. Like they drew a person with a certain look on the face, and he's like, "Oh shit, okay, well, let me figure out how to work this in more," or different things. So,
or if the writer even was confident enough in their own work to look at the artwork and say, you know what, I had some dialogue I was going to fill this up with, but you know what, I think your art carries this. I'm going to pull what I have to say out, if it could go both directions. 100%. Yeah. The back and forth between those two. Really, really interesting stuff.
Yeah, that was awesome. I was going to ask Paul, you had said something about like the artist the art reminded you of some other ones that you've seen. Who else should we be looking at? Like if we like this kind of art?
Well, there's.
Don't mean to put you on the spot or anything.
Because
I really dig it. So,
looking at some of the, looking at the way some of the characters were drawn reminded me of stuff with more like the big two, right? There's a female artist named Rachel Dodson who is fantastic, and she has this kind of style. So she's done some Star Wars issues for Marvel. She did a Princess Leia miniseries, which was really good. I didn't expect to like it as much as I did. Yeah, and that's so. If you look at some of the way she draws the female characters, I thought Rachel Dodson right away. But he's done some other things, and I don't know if these are full length stories or not. But he's done some zombie pages, which reminded me of Walking Dead a little bit. But obviously this is in color, whereas the original Walking Dead was, all in black and white.
Yeah.
And so obviously the color adds a little bit more to it, and it's in the wintertime. So you'll see some of those storyboards he did on that ArtStation site that I just sent you guys the link. I think you really like it. I don't know what else he's doing, but I want to look into it. I haven't seen anything else he's done other than this. So I'm kind of excited to see what else that he could do. And if you guys take a look at that ArtStation, you see some of the different things he's done. Yeah, I'm definitely trying to, see what else he's done, but I haven't seen anything recently. So, It's
Okay.
unfortunate if he doesn't get a chance to,
Right.
to do more work.
Yeah.
He's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, cool, man. Well, I mean, I feel like we should probably just move right into
Yep.
the review section.
Sure.
I think we've covered
Yeah.
this pretty
Yep.
well. So, all right, let's talk about reviews. All right. I mean, I'll hand it off to Ben since you were so excited and you went out and picked up the whole collection. So
Yeah.
let's kick it off,
All
buddy.
right. All right. So for me, story gets, if you watch other episodes, I know I score high often, but I'm doing it again. I'm giving it a 5 for this one because I loved it. It was like Twilight
Wow.
Zone. Yeah, it was like
Mm-hmm.
Twilight Zone, Black Mirror, Stephen King. It was like all these things that I love all mixed into this book. So just going off issue 1, I'm going to go that route because again, I've being very familiar with those kinds of stories, I felt like it hit all the notes that I love. And so, yeah, it was awesome. It's like an expanded Twilight Zone episode or something,
Nice.
like if you guys saw the one with the little kid, the old school adult
Yep.
kid who could make people disappear or turn him into Jack in the Boxes with his mind
Right.
and stuff, or put him out in the cornfield.
Well, they redid that. Well, yeah, they did that one,
Mm.
updated it in the movie
Right,
too.
the '80s movie, yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
yeah, it just hit all the notes that I really, really like. And then the art, as we keep discussing, I'm going to give that a 5 as well because it was just it actually like it's not always easy to evoke that much feeling in the reader with just normal people with a
Mm-hmm.
look on their face. And
Yep.
to make me feel
Yeah.
creeped out or like, what the hell is going on with this person? And some of the
Yeah.
people, it's like almost a straight line for the mouth, but everything else, all the little details, you're just like, there's something creepy here. I'm a
Yep.
little disturbed
Mhm.
by that. And so
Yep.
to be able to capture that
Mm-hmm.
so beautifully and the line art, all that part of it was really clean. It was great, beautiful art. So with 5 and 5, I guess that's a 5
Good math. Good math.
for me.
Nice.
Yeah, highly
He
recommend.
makes
I
it.
know.
Good
Highly
math. Yeah.
recommend.
He makes it
5.
so easy.
I'm good at math.
All right, Paul. What'd you think?
Yeah, I really liked it as well. Obviously, the story has some familiarity. It's a familiar story with some original twists. So it wasn't 100% original, but it was original enough. So based on that, I'm going to give it a 4 because I thought it was original enough, right? Really good story. Again, pretty well paced, but complemented by the art, which the art I'm going to give a 4.5 to because I thought the art was again. Really, really well done, was able to show emotion really, really well, but reminded me of some other artists. And I know artists don't always purposely maybe, imitate or, try to echo another artist's work. And this is just me, the way I interpreted it. It was
Yeah.
a familiar, comfortable, really highly competent work of art. And so for me, it's a 4.5 on the art. So I'm not going to do the math. I'll let Shane figure that out and do that in post.
Great. Thanks. I appreciate that.
The 4 and
Make it
4.5,
challenging on me.
8.5. Ooh, is that
Yeah,
4 and a
I
quarter?
know. I'm gonna
2 bits. I think
gonna
that's
have to
2
get out a
bits. I
calculator.
don't know.
2 bits.
All right. So,
All right,
as
Mike.
we've all, I think, said at some point, to some degree, we've enjoyed the book. I think the solid performance by everyone involved and exceeded my expectations. Not that I carry super high expectations, but it's just like, hey, this is your first issue. Hit me with what you got. And so artwork, I gave the artwork a 4.5. I think we've discussed the talent and the ability to just create a lot of communications without saying anything. So just fantastic job. Story again, fantastic story. I'm intrigued. I'm looking for those little trickling information, that little bit here and there, and so definitely had me hooked. And so I'm giving it a solid 4.0. And so I definitely enjoyed the book. I've enjoyed it to the point where I would like to continue to read, and as Ben has done, collect the series to be able to really figure out what the heck is going on, and what's the next creepy part, and so yes, I enjoyed it thoroughly. So overall,
Yep.
I'm not going to average it. I'm actually going to lean, because it was such an enjoyable book. My overall, I'm going to a 4.5. So
There you go.
Nice. That's very cool. Well, I'm going to probably be a little harder on it than, than everybody. So story for me, I mean, not bad. I'm just, it's just a 3 as far as maybe I just like things to move at a faster pace. But obviously with these review shows, then I sit and second guess myself.
I've been sitting here
that I should
second
have made
guessing
it-
myself since I said the score.
Nice. Okay, then I don't feel so bad then. I don't feel so bad. Okay. All right. And, for the art for me, yeah, I thought it was really, really great. I mean, I've got to just taper it down just a little bit, because we've definitely reviewed books in the past that I was just, blown away by the art. And I feel like this is solid. And we've praised the artist for his or her work on, I don't know if it's male or female, male, right?
It's a
guy. Guy. Their art and being able to communicate that information visually with the facial expressions is fantastic. But just a 4 is this thing a really solid number. Just I wasn't super blown away. But overall, I mean, it's a really, really solid book. I'd say 3.5 for me as a overall, but enough that I'm interested to also go out and see, because now with the big cliffhanger, I definitely want to know what the heck is going on. And I want to know what's going on with that car driving down the street. so they've hooked me enough to get some more money out of me to figure out,
Nice.
what the heck's going on. Maybe that was the point of the pacing, is to get, keep me for the next one.
There you go.
So yeah, I mean, but overall, I did really enjoy it. So yeah, and I love Twilight Zone, and it fits right in that wheelhouse.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's
Indeed.
good stuff.
Loved
Another
it.
great recommendation, Paul. Thank you,
thanks,
sir.
man.
Well, this was another really interesting one. Thanks again to Paul to finding these interesting books for us. Make sure to hit that like, subscribe, and notification button so we can keep bringing you this content. And we'll see you on the next one.